An old antique dealer discovers a device that can make him younger and eventually gets drunk by its power. But as he discovers the truth about it, will he be able to make things right? Let us all find out in the 1993 film titled Kronos. During the year 1536, an alchemist named Uberto Fulcanelli fled the Inquisition and created a device that can give eternal life to anyone who possessed it. He disembarked in Veracruz, Mexico, spending his life perfecting his creation, which he named Kronos. Inside the device, the alchemist put an unspecified insect which was meshed with the internal clockwork and will secrete an unknown substance to anyone who used it. This substance will then give the person immortality. One night in 1937, over 400 years after the creation of Kronos, a building collapsed and the rescuers discovered a man that had strange skin that was as white as the moonlight. He was Uberto, who managed to live all those years, proving that Kronos indeed granted him immortality. However, as the alchemist's chest had been mortally pierced, wounding his heart in the accident, he finally succumbed to his death. The investigation of the incident was later conducted, and everything the authority found in Uberto's household was kept a secret in public. As it turned out, the alchemist was keeping a man captive and somehow collecting the poor man's blood. After the investigation, Uberto's mansion and all his properties were sold at an auction. Yet Kronos was never found nor listed in any of the inventory of the items found in the alchemist's place. Because of this, the immortality device was deemed as if it never existed at all. Years later, an old dealer named Jesus Grease notices a suspicious 59 man looking and checking on the displays in his religious antique shop, which causes him to stop playing with his granddaughter Aurora and asks the man if he can help him with something. Without answering the old man's question, the suspicious man exits the shop, leaving Jesus confused. Then he looks at the display that the mysterious man had been checking out and discovers that it is a figurine of an archangel. Afterward, Jesus continues playing with Aurora until cockroaches emerge from the broken eye of the said figurine. Seeing the insects, Aurora immediately kills them. Shortly after, Jesus inspects the figurine and sees a golden device inside. It is the Kronos which Uberto hid in one of the figurines that ended up in Jesus' antique shop. Looking outside, Jesus sees the mysterious man talking to someone on the phone. This man is calling Angel de la Guardia of De la Guardia Enterprises and notifies him about the figurine that the mysterious man found in Jesus' shop. Hearing this, Angel immediately goes to his terminally ill uncle, Dieter, to make him sign a new draft of his will in exchange for the new information he just got from their informant. Dying to get his hands on the figurine that contains the Kronos, Dieter delightedly orders his nephew to get it quickly. At first, Angel declines, reasoning that he is tired of dealing with his uncle's obsession with Kronos. But later on, he changes his mind as the sick man shows him Uberto's journal. Due to that, Angel goes to Jesus' antique shop and buys the figurine for his uncle, not knowing that Kronos is no longer inside the statue. As Jesus wraps the item, Angel plays with Aurora and gives her gum, acting friendly around the child. Sometime later, Jesus, who has no idea what is the golden device in front of him, cleans the Kronos. When he holds the device and turns its knob, some sort of legs suddenly appear from it and latch into his hand as it gets activated. In pain, Jesus forcefully removes the device, causing his hand to bleed as if it bit his palms. As its legs retract to its body, he reminds his granddaughter to stay away from the device, also assuring her that he is fine. Then, they immediately go home and find Mercedes, Jesus' wife, teaching her friends to dance. Upon seeing her husband, she excuses herself from the others and attends to Jesus' wound. She asks what happened, to which Jesus lies, telling her that he fell into shards of broken glass. Later that night, Jesus starts feeling weird and dehydrated, so he goes to the kitchen and drinks water straight from a pitcher. When he sees the raw meat inside the refrigerator, Jesus feels the thirst for blood, but he dismisses it, disgusted by the thought of him consuming raw blood. He also feels an unease and an immense itch around his wound. Jesus scratches it with a scissor and even bites it, but nothing he does stops the itching. As it turns out, these are the symptoms that Jesus' body is yearning for Kronos once again. Finally, giving up on fighting off the temptation, he lets the device suck his blood as he says his prayer. While doing so, Jesus looks so wasted, like a drug addict taking his vice. Meanwhile, Aurora hears the noise outside her room and decides to check it. Seeing her grandfather on the stairs using the device, she starts to worry about her grandfather's state, but Jesus assures her that he is okay. The next day, Jesus feels a lot better compared to his near-miserable state last night. In addition, he also looks younger and feels healthier. His wrinkles are visibly gone, and his hair thickens. Taking advantage of this, Jesus shaves his mustache and surprises his wife with his new look. Looking around, he doesn't see Aurora at the table, so he asks his wife about their granddaughter, but she also has no idea where Aurora is. Because of that, he goes to his shop alone, only to find it in a mess and has been ransacked. As he sits in frustration, Jesus finds the business card of Angel, which is purposely left at his desk. Seeing this, an idea suddenly pops into his mind as to why the De La Guardias did it to his shop. He immediately goes to their shop carrying a box where Angel joyfully greets him as if he had done nothing wrong to him. Then, Angel takes Jesus to Dieter and the two men talk about Kronos. Dieter, who has a lot of knowledge about the device, warns Jesus about what he is getting himself into. Showing him Huberto's journal, Dieter explains to Jesus that the device he has is called Kronos and that it can give a person immortality. Yet there are certain strict rules that must be followed in order to achieve a never-ending life. In Huberto's writings, Jesus sees the image of an insect which Dieter deems as a living filter. He believes that insects must be God's favorite creatures. For example, mosquitoes can walk on water like Jesus Christ. And there are ants and spiders which can be resurrected back to life even after remaining inside a rock for hundreds of years. Confused, Jesus asks Dieter why he is telling him everything about Kronos. As it turns out, the man is dying. Wanting to live forever, he wants to get his hands on the device to make himself immortal. Suddenly, he grabs the box that Jesus was carrying earlier. When Jesus tries to take the box back, Dieter sees the bandage in his hand, quickly realizing that he already used Kronos, which Jesus reasons that it is only an accident. Pissed, Dieter tells him to get out of their facility. But before he leaves, Jesus looks back at the De La Guardias and cryptically tells Dieter that they will have something to lose. As Jesus leaves their sight, the sick man opens the box but only finds padlocks inside. Realizing that Jesus has made a fool out of him, Dieter mocks him through the PA system of their facility, telling Jesus that only he knows the rules of Kronos and that he will never tell them to him. As Jesus arrives home sweating and panting, he goes to get Kronos to use it again. But to his dismay, it is missing and he immediately realizes that Aurora must have taken it after seeing what happened last night. Going to the rooftop, Jesus looks for it in his granddaughter's chest of toys but finds nothing. Eventually, he sees Aurora hiding behind a blanket. Sitting at their usual tea spot, Jesus plays with his granddaughter and convinces her to give back the device to him. He assures Aurora that nothing bad will ever happen to him as long as they are together. Hearing this, Aurora finally gets out of hiding and hands the stuffed bear to Jesus where she hid Kronos. Later that night, the Grease family head to a New Year's party in their community, but Jesus uses Kronos first before going. As he feels the effect of using the device, he notices that the prick wounds he gets from its legs heal immediately. At the party, he shows increased sexual appetite as he passionately kisses Mercedes during the dance. Even while eating, Jesus does not let go of his wife, clinging to her like they are still teenagers. However, their fun is interrupted when he sees a man having a nosebleed. Feeling the thirst for blood once more, Jesus excuses himself and follows the man to the comfort room. There, he waits until the man is done cleaning himself before attempting to lick the blood dropped on the sink. At the moment, a man comes out of the cubicle, causing Jesus to act as if nothing happened. And to his frustrations, the man cleans off the blood from the sink before he leaves. Lucky for him, there is still a drop of blood on the floor, and he goes straight to lick it. All of a sudden, Angel enters the comfort room and kicks him in the head, making him unconscious. Dragging Jesus out of the party, Angel brings him somewhere else and beats the hell out of him. Angel is tired of dealing with his uncle's treatment of him and his obsession over the Kronos, so he is venting out his frustrations on Jesus. While doing so, Angel asks why his uncle is so obsessed with Kronos, to which Jesus answers him truthfully to the extent of his knowledge about the device. Hearing this, Angel laughs at it, thinking that it's ridiculous. In turn, Jesus pleads with Angel to let him go, but the man continues hitting him. Afterward, Angel puts him inside a car and pushes it off the cliff. Jesus lies down incapacitated, feeling like he is dying there alone. Scared, he prays to God to let him live. Shortly after, in their house, Aurora is woken up by the police's sirens. The next day, Jesus' body is brought to a funeral parlor where he is being attended by Tito. Putting passion into his work, Tito does his best to make Jesus look like he is just sleeping by putting makeup on his wounds. But as his employer tells him that Jesus will be cremated, Tito loses his interest in the body and tells his employer to inform him earlier next time so he will not waste his makeup. Meanwhile, in their shop, Dieter calls on Angel to meet him in his room. There, a smack from the sick man's cane greets Angel for what he has done to Jesus. In return, Angel lies, saying that he did not do anything to him, it's just that his car skidded and went off the cliff. Hearing this, Dieter wants to know if something pierced through Jesus' heart, but Angel is not sure about it. Frustrated, the sick old man talks trash about Angel, calling him useless. Giving his nephew one last chance, Dieter orders Angel to make sure Jesus is dead and take Kronos from him. Following his uncle's order, Angel visits Jesus' wake and jokingly pinches his nose to make sure he is dead. A few days later, Jesus is brought back to the funeral parlor for his cremation. Upon preparing the incinerator, Tito notices that it is not properly burning, so he goes to the basement for a while to fix it. But when he comes back, Tito does not notice that Jesus is no longer in his coffin. Not long after, Angel shows up again and asks to see Jesus' body for the last time. As Tito tells him that the coffin is already burning inside the incinerator, Angel smiles, believing that Jesus is permanently gone for real. However, Jesus is still alive, but not well. Walking through the cold night, he searches the dumpster to find a blanket to use. Inside, Jesus finds a newspaper and reads his name in the obituary. Due to this, he calls home and tries to talk to Mercedes. But just as Jesus utters her name, she puts down the telephone, thinking that someone is pranking her on the other line. It is then revealed that Aurora listens to the brief call since their telephone lines in the house are all connected. When Jesus goes home, his granddaughter greets him and gives him a clean towel. Subsequently, they go to the rooftop where Aurora removes all her toys from the chest so Jesus can use it to rest. He also uses Kronos again in hopes of regaining his strength and healing his wounds. However, the sunlight shines through the holes in the roof and burns Jesus' skin like he is a vampire. Acting quickly, he gets into the chest and rests as Aurora closes it. Later that night, Jesus wakes up and finds his granddaughter painting on the wall while waiting for him. Seeing this, he gets the idea of writing to his wife. He attempts many times but cannot seem to find the right words to use to talk to Mercedes. Finally, partly hiding the truth, Jesus tells Mercedes that he managed to live after the accident without specifying the reason. Yet he promises that he will finish what he started. All he wishes is that if everything is done and he manages to live, she can still accept him no matter what he looks like. After finishing his letter, Jesus leaves it with Aurora and entrusts it to her to give to her grandmother. He then goes to the shop of De La Guardias to confront Dieter on the whole truth about Kronos. But to his surprise, Aurora turns out to follow him all the way from their house. Jesus scolds her for following him and whisper, but she shows him that she has brought Kronos with her. Seeing this, Jesus has no other option but to tag along his granddaughter with him in order to ensure her safety. They take advantage of Aurora's small size to enter Dieter's room through the food window and open it from the inside to allow Jesus inside. There, Jesus starts quietly looking for Huberto's journal while Aurora snoops around. Without them noticing, Dieter is woken up from his sleep and sees what Jesus and Aurora are doing. As Aurora hands her grandfather the box she found, Jesus sees Huberto's journal inside. However, as he scans through the journal, he notices that the content he looks for is missing. Suddenly, Dieter exclaims behind them, saying that Kronos has worked on Jesus and made him immortal. But Jesus should not bother looking for the missing pages because he already ate them. Hearing this, Jesus orders him to explain what is happening to him, starting with why his skin is rotting off. But instead of a concrete answer, Dieter just peels his skin off, revealing white skin beneath his old, rotting skin. He then secretly presses a button that calls Angel to come up to his room. After giving Jesus a mirror so he can look at himself, Dieter tells him that he has been reborn. And in exchange for immortality, Jesus will now depend on human blood to continue living. If he destroys Kronos, it will cause his death. Dieter convinces Jesus not to do it, saying that they can share immortality together. Jesus feels insulted and screams at Dieter, stating that he does not want to live forever, but to live in peace. Dieter smiles and reveals that there is a way for him to die without destroying the device. However, before he tells Jesus what it is, he wants him to hand over Kronos first. Handing the device to Dieter, Jesus is shocked when he suddenly gets stabbed in his chest, nearly hitting his heart. Wanting to make sure that he will die, Dieter pins him to the ground, and the two men struggle. Without Dieter noticing, Aurora picks up his cane and swings it at his head, causing him to collapse on the ground. When Jesus stands up, he urges Aurora that they should escape immediately. But upon seeing Dieter bleeding out, he can't help but go take a sip. Shortly after, they hear the elevator going up, indicating that Angel is already coming. Due to that, the two quickly hide. Unexpectedly, instead of becoming worried upon seeing his uncle bleeding on the ground, Angel rejoices. He ends Dieter's life by breaking his neck, uttering that he has been suffering for a long time because of him. Seeing him distracted, Jesus takes the opportunity to get near Angel and hits him with Dieter's cane. Then, he and Aurora escape to the rooftop, with Angel following them. Cornered, Jesus takes Aurora to the shop's signboard, where there is an emergency stair that leads to the ground. As Angel catches up to them, he faces him to allow Aurora to escape. At this time, Angel starts beating Jesus, taking the upper hand. But Jesus stands up and tells Angel that he will have more to lose than he will in this fight. He then suddenly charges at him, causing both of them to fall down from the rooftop. Seeing this, Aurora moves fast and goes to her grandfather to use Kronos on him. Jesus recovers and wakes up and starts peeling off the skin of his body. However, looking at Aurora, he feels that his thirst for blood is getting stronger. Seeing his granddaughter look at him with fear, Jesus realizes what he has become and destroys the device. Expecting himself to be slowly dying, Jesus utters his name again and again, not wanting to die as a monster. Yet, contrary to what Dieter said earlier, Jesus does not die. Still, he decides to go home. He lies down in bed, waiting for the sun to shine on him. The movie ends with Jesus awaiting his fate without regrets because he has Aurora and Mercedes by his side. The 1993 film Kronos is surprisingly a simple and well-executed movie. Taking a little twist in a classic vampire trope, this movie explores a slightly different route in telling the story. Although not scary, the viewers still manage to get an eerie feeling while watching this film. If you want